welcome back to another mini yarn on Yarns for the Soul. I'm your host, Nicole. Thank you so much for coming back, putting up with my voice and my yarns, no matter what direction they go in. Really appreciate the support, appreciate you coming back here to listen. It's amazing, and I'm excited to keep bringing you some more yarns this year. I've got some goodies in mind, and I've heard from a few people that you like my mini yarns, so who knew that me just talking to myself in random rooms across the world could actually resonate with people. But there you go. So yeah, really appreciate you coming back. If you are enjoying hearing my voice again and again, then it'd be awesome for you to rate or review the podcast on whatever platform you listen on. Head over to Spotify. 5 stars would be fantastic, please and thank you. Today I wanted to yarn about nomad life and luck, which may not seem like an obvious combination of topics to be talking about, but it is something that's been popping up for me probably since I left New Zealand. So I left at the start of June 2023, and it's now over 7 months, which is crazy. Time is just passing differently at the moment. I think probably the lack of structure doesn't really help, the lack of structure and routine. Something I need to work on this year. But there's people that I've met along the way, people from back home supporting me from afar. But it's a comment that I've had from a few people when I kind of explain what I'm up to and talk about my lifestyle. People often say, "Oh, you're so lucky." And I mean, it's a fairly harmless comment and often kind of just said in passing, which is fine. And then there was something about it that just sort of stuck and didn't quite sit right with me, and I realised I kind of needed to unpack that. And so I thought, let's yarn about it, let's do a podcast on this, because yeah, I think it's interesting and I get to choose the topics here. So I guess the key part of my current nomad life is the job means I can keep earning money and I'm not homeless. I can afford to do a bit of travel, can afford to kind of keep moving around and not actually have a base anywhere. I'm not paying rent anywhere. And I think probably that's the key part that people might see as lucky, is the remote work, and that's something that I see a lot of people, aspiring to, wanting to find like this magical remote working job that gives them that flexibility to move around. And yeah, I guess, me even a year ago, let alone 2 years ago, would never have thought that this was possible for me, that remote working was ever really going to be an option in a way that I found fulfilling as well. I didn't think that my legal training could lead to anything beyond sitting in an office behind a desk or, going to court every day. Certainly those roles you can't do remotely, you have to be there in person. There's always something going on. And finding my current role almost felt like chance, and was actually recommended to me by a friend who I'm very lucky that she, said my name in a room full of people and it worked. And yeah, it feels like chance, but I kind of need to remind myself that I spent those years of study and working, and I have the skills, I've got that knowledge, I have the work ethic that I can work independently, choose my own hours, and actually I've worked hard to build that knowledge base and those skills so that when this offer came along, currently working as a contractor for a branch of the New Zealand Ministry of Justice, and it started earlier in the year before I left the country. It was just a short-term contract. I desperately needed to get some money to get myself over to the other side of the world. And then when things were going well, I handed in my first piece of work. I got some good feedback. I was incredibly nervous about that. I thought, well, I'll just ask if I can work remotely, and remotely happens to be on the other side of the world. And they said yes. Who knew? And kind of haven't looked back. So my contract was initially extended basically until Christmas time, and it was working well. I thought, why don't I try and extend it again rather than having to get a job and settle down in one place? So luckily feel very grateful that that's all worked out. But I know that I just used the word luck there as well. But the thing is, reminding myself to give myself more credit for the skills that I have, work that I've done, casual master's degree that I did when I was working full time. So it's all those things that has kind of led me to what I'm doing now, and I probably wouldn't be able to be doing it had the past version of me not worked so damn hard to get through all of that. And so I guess for other people out there who, I thought that I was in an industry that wouldn't have options like this for me, but here I am. So it's like, I guess, continuing to look for those options, maybe thinking outside the box. I'm technically self-employed. I'm not actually practicing as a lawyer, which means I cannot give you advice, which is also quite nice. So I guess it's like, if this is something that you want to go after, some of the outside the box thinking might be required, and there might be a few hoops to jump through. I'm battling different tax laws, but it is doable. The easy answer obviously isn't always right in front of you. So I think that's part of why I get frustrated when people say, oh, you're so lucky. And there's also other options. Like, I'm only working part-time, so I do a lot of house sitting and pet sitting. There's a website called Trusted House Sitters. So for a small annual fee, you sign up, you build a whole profile, and then you can basically start applying for pet sits. So people will put up the dates and location where they need someone, and then you can apply. You just get in touch with them. It's a bit of admin going through that, applying, communicating with everyone. But my very first one was like 2.5 weeks in southern France, which was amazing. So I got to hang out with 2 dogs, a cat and some horses in the middle of the heatwave in August 2023, which was an adventure in itself, and I could do a whole podcast on that experience alone. But other than that, my pet sitting has been in a couple of different places in the UK, and I've got some more of that coming up. So it's nice. It means I get to have some company in the form of animals. I get to go to different places that I may not have otherwise visited. Summer season in Europe if I can. But yeah, it's like it's a fun lifestyle, but it's also constant planning, constant moving, living out of a suitcase. And I guess that's kind of another facet of my lifestyle is I don't really get to go shopping. I don't often get to fully unpack, and I have a lot of time in my own head by myself, or I'm hanging out with animals who aren't always the best conversationalists. So there's that other aspect. And I guess, if you're an extreme extrovert and you love being around people, you probably find your own solutions. But at the same time, maybe some of the house sitting and some of the stuff that I've been doing may not work for your personality type, but it happens to work for me. But yeah, it's kind of is constant moving pieces, and then trying to figure out how to make each sort of step work in the best possible way for me. Another aspect, I think, being told that I'm lucky also sort of stings a bit, because I think not everyone necessarily understands or is even aware of like my backstory, my origin story, why I'm here. Not everyone sees the struggles that I still face, like post burnout. I still have fatigue. That's where the routine and structure kind of help, settle my nervous system and anxiety, try and keep me a bit more grounded. But the fatigue is real, and I'm still in a space where I don't know how long that's going to last, which is incredibly frustrating. And there's been times where, I'm visiting new places and want to be a tourist. I want to go out and do all the things, but I have to look after myself. There are days where my energy levels are really low, and if I don't take each day fairly quietly, if I overdo it one day, then I'll end up with like 2 or 3 days where I need to rest and I can't be productive. So it can be difficult. And there's also times where I'm sick of making decisions. I cannot make any more decisions. And even the thought of like going out in a new place, in a different language, trying to find something to eat can be too much. It can be so overwhelming. So I end up eating McDonald's again, because it means I don't have to really interact with someone. I know that the like self-checkout machine things usually have an option for English. I understand what the system looks like. I know how it works. I can predict how the food's probably going to taste. And that's trying to make my life easier, because I'm at a point where it all feels like it's too hard. But then there's like that part of my brain kind of beating me up for that, which is tough as well, because it's like, you're in this new place, why are you not going out, go to a restaurant, go do something different, try some of the local food. So it's really taking a step back and acknowledging I don't have to constantly be doing that, and I have to check in with myself to see where I'm at mentally and physically each day. And if that looks like a cheeseburger at McDonald's, then so be it, But I think that's also linked to like our current society. It's still very like hustle culture. We're meant to be productive every minute of every day. We're supposed to be doing something. And a friend made a very helpful comment to me. She said, even if you were at home living a like quote normal lifestyle, you'd still have days where you're on the couch watching Netflix for an afternoon, and the expectation that I've put on myself of constantly getting out there and seeing all the things is unreasonable. So I still have to remind myself of that. And it's a daily practice of working on honouring my body, my energy levels, meeting myself where I am each day, and not beating myself up if I don't have capacity for something that I thought that I would. In those moments I kind of reflect on what's my why. Like, why am I here? How do I want to be spending my time? And it's more about trying to enjoy the moments, enjoying the journey, going with the flow rather than ticking things off a list, because I know that it's in those flow moments that I'll find things that I didn't expect. And hopefully those things were meant to find me, as long as I'm in the right headspace to allow them in. But it's challenging, and I think those are things that also people don't see about this life. Is I think it would be semi-exhausting on a good day, but dealing with fatigue and burnout kind of makes it just an extra challenge for me, because why not? And I feel like where I'm at now, what I'm doing with my life kind of almost encapsulates the last 5 years. It feels like it's been so much personal growth, overcoming things, mental health challenges, introspection and going deep, dealing with stressful jobs, changing cities, starting and finishing my master's degree, going through the early years of grief, and then hitting burnout when I reflect back, I'm like, that's a lot, you know. And I feel like if I didn't experience all of this, I might not be here. I might not be doing life the way that I am, and my life would have taken a different course. And the fact that I survived all of that, got through the survival mode phases as well, and got back into actually living, meant that I was able to be here. And I like to think that choosing this current lifestyle is really a testament to myself, for everything that I went through and surviving it. And I got here really by just trusting, because there were the bad days where it was a bit dark, where the grief was overwhelming, where you just don't know if it's going to get better. So all you can do is trust that it will get better. And that's what's got me here. So that's what I'm going to continue to do, is just keep trusting and, you know, acknowledging that I could have got stuck in those things. I could have got stuck in victim mode, in the grief and the overwhelm, blaming the world, blaming everyone around me, and feel like there's nothing else left and get stuck in that. So to me, there's no luck behind the way that I'm living now. It's actually been years of challenges. It's been years of fighting that and choosing healing, you know, really consciously choosing and trusting that there's going to be a way forward. So it's not luck for me. And I think that's the thing, is we're all responsible for our own choices. We've got a responsibility for those. And, you know, people might look at me and say that I'm lucky, but equally I could look at someone else who's living life in a completely different way and call them lucky. You know, I've got friends who are smashing it in their careers, who are like stepping up the corporate ladder, friends owning their own businesses. You've got a house, you've got a partner, you've got the dog. You know, I feel like I could say to those people like, hey, I think you're really lucky, look at you go. But I know that that's not fair, because I can see that they've worked for that. I can see that it's not easy, and acknowledge that they've made different choices, and that's why we're on different paths. So I feel like rather than, you know, being dissatisfied and looking outside of yourself, thinking that the way that someone else is living is lucky, we can instead like reflect back on our own choices and create space to make new choices if that's what you really want to do. I think that's the thing as well, is if you see someone living life a different way, be like, you know, ask yourself, is it possible to live your life that way if that's what you really want? Or checking in with yourself and the choices you've made and be like, do I want something different? Or am I just thinking the grass is greener on the other side? You know, we don't actually know about all the ins and outs of other people's lifestyles. It always looks easier from the outside, right? And yeah, it's been quite freeing living in a way, not being tied to achievement, and feeling like I'm not necessarily attached to achieving anything in particular externally, which is quite an interesting sort of thought process going into a new year, trying to figure out what direction I'm heading in. And, you know, other than visiting new countries, which is definitely on the to-do list, but actually all I want to do is continue to be more curious about what happens when I trust my instincts and my intuition and go with the flow. And yeah, excited to see where that takes me next, because I know that that's really what has led me here, is going with the flow and trusting myself, trusting that I've got everything it takes to keep finding those things that were meant for me, even though I don't know what they are. And yeah, trusting that that life has good things in store for me, because yeah, I feel like this approach has worked so far. So that's a bit of my yarn on my nomad life, how I've kind of been managing over the past 7 months now. There's kind of things that I've touched on there that I might end up expanding on more for further mini yarns. I think the idea of traveling with fatigue is something that I will probably expand on further because yeah, it's tough and really kind of battling those ideas and the expectations that I've put on myself that I don't think actually belong to me. I think they're external things that have been put onto me about how I'm supposed to be spending my time. So yeah, I would love to unpack that further, but those are some of my reflections on my current nomad lifestyle and having had many people tell me that I'm lucky and possibly why I don't think that resonates with me, and why I don't think that's a useful or a helpful term. And yeah, I guess if you think I'm lucky, if you want this lifestyle, it is out there. But yeah, I hope at least by sharing parts of my story about how I got here, maybe just shows it's not all like magic and rainbows, that there's good days and bad days. And I feel like I worked hard for this. So let's see what this lifestyle has in store for me going forward. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed this bit of a ramble, and there'll be more to come.